Our politically incorrect segment tonight. Last month, the Boy Scouts of America reversed their longstanding policy of being an organization just for boys, hence the name, and announced they would start admitting girls. Feminists touted this as a victory for women, but it wasn't. Perhaps it was a victory for feminists, but it was a victory for their warped view of femininity and their version of reality, where they try to destroy masculinity while at the same time pretending to be men. It wasn't about equality at all. With me now, author of Redeeming the Feminine Soul, Julie Roys. Julie, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Liz, great to be with you.
All right, Julie, feminists told us that this was a victory for women. They celebrated it. The Girl Scouts themselves weren't happy. Many people on the left were. You say you were disgusted by this decision. How come?
Well, I think it just betrays an underlying thought that it's cool to be boys, but it's not cool to be girls. I mean, why do girls want to be in the Boy Scouts? We don't see boys clamoring to be Girl Scouts, but we see girls clamoring to be Boy Scouts. In fact, I think this was all started by a 15-year-old, I think her name is Sydney Ireland, and she said she wanted to be a Boy Scout, wanted to be an Eagle Scout, noting that Eagle Scouts have been senators and all sorts of great things. And I will say the corresponding Girl Scouts, their Gold Award, which is their highest award, really there's not a lot of notable people who have gotten this Gold Award from the Girl Scouts, but I think that just shows we need maybe to beef up the Girl Scouts, or maybe we need to get alternate organizations, but I don't think it helps for girls to want to be boys. I mean, why do we want to be boys? I mean, don't we value what we bring to the table uniquely as women? And I really think that's sort of the underlying thing here.
Right. Essentially, and I don't want to tell this girl how to act, I guess, but it seems to me that she could have just lobbied to reform the Girl Scouts and brought in the awards or the merits that she wanted from the Boy Scouts. She should have advocated for the Girl Scouts to start doing those things too, instead of doing this. But talk to me about this point. This was very interesting in your article, I thought. You said, in our culture, girls are taught to want to be more like boys. If you're a tomboy as a kid, you get a pat on the head. But opposite, boys that want to be girls, that is highly discouraged. Where did this disparity come from? Does that come from feminists teaching little girls that they should want to be like boys?
Well, I think if you follow the history of it, which I outline in my book, it does come from really second wave feminism, which was a rejection of femininity in many ways. So you have Gloria Steinem, sort of the feminist icon, saying, hey, we're becoming the boys we wanted to marry. And never really thinking, well, why do we want to become the boys we wanted to marry? And we have them talking, for example, Betty Friedan saying in The Feminine Mystique, this great classic, that women who are housewives, she compares it to people going into concentration camps. I mean, that was her view of the home. That was her view of motherhood. And really, that's very warped. I mean, we should, as women, be valuing what we uniquely bring to the table. Instead, we're saying, oh, the home is a horrible place. Being a mother is a horrible thing. And so now we see women aborting their babies, 1 million a year in the U.S. I mean, how misogynistic is that? Nobody looks at that. We have these feminists talking about misogyny and this hatred of women, and yet they don't see the way in which they've really hated parts of themselves, and instead saying, I don't want to be a woman anymore. Let's all become like men. And somehow that's progress. And Liz, I don't think that is progress. I think we have died to something essential within ourselves. And I think as a result, we're killing ourselves as women, and we're also impoverishing our country. I mean, if you look at our country right now, it's overly masculine in so many ways, sort of this brutish masculinity, but there's not a value on feminine. There's not a value on nurturing and care and compassion and the things that we as women uniquely bring to the table. And I would say a lot of it does stem from second wave feminism.
Right, and it's very interesting. Our culture does teach that masculinity is toxic. I mean, there were people on the left, I should say, that were blaming so-called toxic masculinity for the mass shooting that happened in Sutherland Springs, Texas. We're told that it's toxic. We're told that men are inherently sexist, inherently misogynistic, and that they only want to oppress us. Yet, we're not celebrating that which makes us feminine, that which makes us women. In fact, we're told that femininity means that we're weak, and that we should want to be more like men. It's a very interesting comparison, because it sort of brings the question, what do feminists want people to be? Do they want to erase gender entirely?
Well, I think some of them do. In fact, if you look at Simone de Beauvoir, who was the ideological founder of second wave feminism, and she wanted to get rid of gender altogether. She said as long as women were considered other by men, that men would seek to oppress them. So she wanted a genderless society. And when you look at it right now, what's going on, we're sort of going to that, sort of a genderless society. But you're absolutely right, Liz, that there is something in our culture where, for example, if somebody says you're one of the boys, that's a compliment. However, it's an insult to say to boys that they're a bunch of girls. What does that say again about our culture? And I think a lot of feminists, to be honest, they haven't really thought about what they're doing. And many of them have been wounded by men. Many of them have been oppressed by men. And so there's a real thing going on there. I mean, we don't have Harvey Weinsteins and this big scandal going on in Hollywood because there's no oppression of women. I mean, there is oppression of women, and I think we need to speak out against that. But at the same time, we can't turn against ourselves. And what we need to do is begin sort of a new femininity is what I call for, that we need to have a femininity that actually upholds the feminine, that actually upholds motherhood and makes it so that women aren't ashamed to say, hey, I want to stay home with my kids if that's what I want to do. And I don't think there's a one size that fits all for all women, but I'm just saying we should have that as an option that's valued in our society. Instead, we've devalued it. And as women, we've been our own worst enemies.
Right. It seems so. Maybe spearheaded by these feminists. Julie, very interesting perspective. I think you're correct. I, at least in my professional life, try to do the same thing. You don't have to sacrifice being your femininity to be strong or to be a leader or to be outspoken. You can have a hybrid of the two, and that's what makes our gender so special. Julie,